What's up? It's Matt Plapp. We are live with another restaurant expert roundup this morning, bright and early with some coffee. It's early for me. It's even earlier for you, David Scott Peters. How is Arizona?
Arizona is a little gloomy, but nice, compared to anywhere else. I think we're a little cloudy and going to be maybe 72 today.
72. So it's like 20 degrees outside right now. So I can't wait because I'm in Florida in next week for a couple of days. I'm in Arizona in 3 weeks. So I can't wait, one, meet you in person, but two, leave 20-degree weather from Northern Kentucky.
Amen. Amen.
So my question for you, because I saw some, obviously I follow you on social media, and I saw a couple posts you had recently that really got me thinking about this, and it's, what should restaurants be doing right now? The second round of PPP is coming out. I know you've mentioned there's stats out there that somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of restaurants went out of business last year. The ones that are in business right now, I would imagine they're at least positioned they know what to expect, and they're probably expecting worse than they were expecting this time last year. What should restaurants be doing right now?
Well, I think there's 5 areas that I want to pay attention to. And the first one is we probably don't think that this is what we need to pay attention to. But I'm going to tell you the number one reason why restaurants fail is lack of leadership. And the first thing you've got to do as an operator is assess your leadership style. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? For instance, I want you to imagine there's like a cloud, and the cloud this is where all the crazy makers live. These are the victims in our business. Well, most of those are out of business now because COVID wiped them out because, the customers are horrible. My employees are horrible. We do everything ourselves. Like everything's a problem. There's never a solution. Well, nobody listening to me right now and us right now is that victim. I can't imagine that because you wouldn't be searching out information. But we fall into two camps in general. Number one, they're the bean counters. These are the numbers people who run the business based off their P&Ls, off the systems, security cameras. But they're often a little impatient with people, don't communicate what they want for service and so on. Then the other people most of us fall into what I call the giver. These are the social workers. They care more about the guest experience, the employees, everything about service levels and wow, but they never pay attention to the numbers. And so all of a sudden you can lose your business on either side of this. So where I want people to be is the captain. This is the leader of their ship, the leader your restaurant needs. And that's where we take advantage of both of the good parts. Hey, let's pay attention to our numbers, put systems in place, hold people accountable, but let's never forget the guest experience. And let's make sure our employees we're a great place, an employer of choice, great place to work. Make sure that we communicate what we want for service levels and so on. And so this is where systems come in. So I'm like the systems guy. They allow you to impose your will without being there. And so what we've got to do is assess, who are we? Are we primarily a numbers person, or are we a social worker? And in doing so, we've got to use systems to make up for those differences. For instance, let's say I'm a pencil pusher and I'm really paying attention to the bean counters, paying attention to the numbers. Well, if I put systems in place to say, here's what our steps of service are, train those steps of service, well, I'm communicating that level of service and I'm getting more out of my team. Vice versa. If all I care about the guest experience, if I put budgets in place and I put ordering systems in place and whatever, I can stay on budget, make the money I deserve. So it makes up for our weaknesses as a person. So I would tell you, Matt, the first thing people don't think about is, what kind of leader am I? And more importantly today, as we hopefully come out of COVID in the next 4 to 6 months, how do I become the leader my restaurant needs? Does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense because it's something that I've been reflecting on myself as a business owner is, am I leading my team correctly? I came up with a strategy for 2000, and actually I started late last year, but it's for the future. But I looked at it and said, in 2021, what can I do better? For my company, I can lead my team better, I can market my company better, and I can sell better. Because at the end of the day, that's the 3 key pillars, I think, in most businesses. But for me, what I found was I've got some pretty awesome employees. You have about 28 full and part-time employees and real close contractors. And I found that I had probably 5 or 10 of them that I was giving enough direction to do a pretty good job. But I was like, wow, imagine if I give them like the why and the deep how, the deep like where my vision's at. And all of a sudden they get it. And I've already seen it in the past month when I've employed this. I got this sheet every day. I printed it. A bunch of them printed out. Every night I fill it out the next day, and every day I look back. Did I lead for 2 hours today? Did I market for 2 hours and did I sell for 2 hours? I think that leading, a lot of us are like me. I was thrown into my marketing company. I mean, I started it from scratch, but I didn't plan on having 20 plus people. I planned on having me. That was my vision. And so I can see that big time.
Yeah, and so if we think about it, for years and years and years, I've been coaching independent restaurants since 2003, and the mantra is, "Hey, work on your business, not in it." Well, COVID threw us a curve, and threw that all out the window. Now it was like work in the business because we're short on employees, we're short on cash, whether it's sales or money in the bank, and you've got to do whatever you can. But now we've got to get back to becoming the leader your restaurant needs, and get back to, as an owner, your role is working on budgets. It's marketing, it's developing your team, it's leading people, holding them accountable. And that is something, a message that most people have to really relearn and say, hey, I need to be the leader my restaurant needs. Now, the second and third piece are very basic, but they've changed a little bit. And because we've kind of been beaten up by COVID so badly, we've kind of lost some of the passion we have for the restaurant business. I see it. I'm on the phone with restaurant owners every single day. And so the second piece is remembering Restaurant 101, why we were put on this earth. You've got to give the best experience possible. That's hot food hot, cold food cold, clean, safe work environment for the guests, employees, wow, customer service, incredible product. We have the pleasure of creating memories for people. And the difference now is, because of now the Doordashes of the world and the Uber Eats and all these delivery services, to go, curbside, that extends, our service level extends to product that gets to somebody's home. Are we sanitary? Do we have the right to go containers? For instance, we've got a local sports bar here that from time to time I'll DoorDash, and I hope that the dasher gets me really quick because they put it in this plastic container. And so all of a sudden the French fries, there's like this rainforest effect that comes in. I've got these shitty fries and whatever, but that's them. It got to me. That may have left their restaurant wonderful. By the time it got to me, I'm like, man, these got to go in an air fryer because they suck. Yep. And we've got to remember all those steps. And how do we give our guests the best experience? Not just what's the cheapest thing in styrofoam and let's put it out there. Now, the third piece that goes in here, and then we can dive into things that really make a difference. But believe it or not, it's checklists and cash controls. Like all the systems part that I teach, and I want to go in there. If you don't create a culture where the details matter, how do you think you're going to get and implement these systems? You're going to get your chef to wake up on a Sunday and be excited about taking inventory accurately, on time, doing it your way. They're not. If you don't care about a gasket, if you don't care about steps of service, you don't care about cleanliness throughout the restaurant and creating pride in your business, then it doesn't matter. If you don't make sure every penny makes it to the bank, that we don't, allow servers to round up, round down when they turn in their money, that we look at our POS report at the end of the day and type it into our spreadsheets or software and see that we're $50 over one day, $90 short the next day, and go, oh, it must be the damn POS system. Like, you've got to make sure the details matter throughout your restaurant. And so, it goes leadership, Restaurant 101, cash controls and checklists. And that's where we start to impose our will. That's when we start to get things done our way. From there, we start to build into the big things. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I had a conversation the other day with a business owner, and he's actually a restaurant consultant / owns a restaurant. And we were talking about just things, brainstorming stuff. And he had brought up something to me that I bounced back at him. I said, let me ask you this. What kind of car do you drive? He said, I've got a Ford. I said, do you think Ford, you think that Ford you bought, you're the first one to ever test drive it? Like, what if they built that car with no systems, no process, just threw crap on there, and you were the first person to ever pull it on the road? But that scared the shit out of you. And he goes, well, yeah. I said, it's kind of what you're doing with your restaurant, what you just told me. Like, you're testing something new on people that are in line right now. Like, and there's not a sheet that tells your staff, like, do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I said, if you don't have that, how can you expect them to do it correctly? And he's like, wow, I just gave my customers a car that could crash. I said, yeah, you might have got lucky and didn't, but there's a good chance that it could. So don't be surprised when it crashes.
Right. Again, another analogy is, look at it is if you get an airplane, I don't care how many years a pilot's flown. What do? They go through a checklist. Right? They ensure the process is working, that it's going to be done the same way every single time. Do you want to get on a plane? To use that analogy, you want to get on a plane who just, hey, I've done this 20 years. I've just got it. You missed that one switch. We're going down. I don't want that. right? So it really allows you to say, this is exactly what I want done, how I want it done. And what a lot of people don't realize is it's the beginning of training. Like if you've got bad training systems, your checklist, if they're written properly, really allow people to tell them exactly what you want done. But what's really important about that is where we drop the ball on checklists. Let's just chase this squirrel for a second, Matt. I don't know how many restaurant owners you've talked to about checklists, but 99% of them will look at me and say, checklists don't work. I can't get my employees to use them. I don't know what the hell that means, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean you can't get them to use them? So I always tell people there's only two reasons why checklists don't work in your restaurant. Number one, your checklists suck. They're not detailed enough. They say roll up bin full. Well, is that different for a Friday versus a Monday? Do you need 50? Do you need 100? Do you need 300? Do you need 1,000? Are you being specific and clear? And the other is like, clean the bathroom. Well, I walked in, the bathroom still had water spots and standing water, and trash can was 3/4 full. These people don't follow. And I'll say, wait a second. Did you tell them no water spots in the mirror, no standing water? If it's 50% full in the trash can, take it out. Because have you ever been to one of your employees' apartments to see what they think is clean, right? You have to tell them. And the second piece is you're not holding the right people accountable. What I mean by that. So if I go on a consult in the old days, because I tend to talk people out of consults, I think coaching's a better way to go, spend less money, you learn the skill versus me come in and do. But the fact of the matter is I go there and I be on the ground and I talk to a manager and owner and they tell me about a server, they didn't do their side work and they bitch and moan. I go, what'd you do? Well, I wrote them up. I said, wrong. You wrote up the wrong person. Why do we have managers in the first place, Matt?
To manage a process and system.
Yeah, ensure the process is working. So I'm not writing up the line employee. I'm writing up the manager. See, as a manager, my job is to make sure all this gets done. And if I'm willing to let people go home without doing their side work, then I need to do it before I go home because we want to change our culture closed to open. No more AM, PM blues when we walk in the restaurant and go, damn, who closed last night? They didn't do this and this and this and this. And we bitch and moan and we're right. But the fact of the matter is, we want to make sure we have each other's back, that when your management team can trust each other, that we walk in the building, it's 100% ready to go, man, our culture starts to change. We start to have people understand there's a system, a process, a way, that we all do it the same way. And that's immense. And so, when it comes down to those top three things, being a lady restaurant 101, checklists and cash controls, all of a sudden you're building the foundation of your systems. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I want to hit back on something you mentioned in trust. I've got a sports background, played football in college. I use the word play loosely. I did get cited for eating on the sideline one time, but that's another funny story I'll tell you one time. But I remember listening to a coach a couple of years ago on an interview about his offense and defense. And like, man, coach, into the game, you had 2 minutes left. You were down by this many points and you punted the ball instead of going for it on fourth. And he said, I knew my defense would stop it. He's like, I knew my defense coordinator had the plan. I knew his players were ready, and they did. They got 3 and out. They got the ball back. We scored and won. And it's what you said there to me resonates from that standpoint, that if you're the person opening up the restaurant the next day, you knew the person before you did this, and you know what you're going to do for the next person. And I think a lot of times that's the problem, is that there's not an inherent trust among our understanding among the different divisions of companies. And that's kind of what that is. But I remember a client of mine telling me a while back, he took me under his wing. He's a friend of mine. He owns, I guess he's got about 9 or 10 restaurants now. And he was the person that got me from a marketing standpoint into the restaurant back in 2009. And I remember talking to him, we went to a certain national brand, and he goes, Matt, I want to show you something. Looking, he was like, if you're in this brand and you see that person right there, yeah, he goes, that's the manager. If they leave that corner, that means they're not doing their job. That's what do you mean? He goes, well, that person's job is to manage that thing, not to do it. He's like, now in certain instances, yeah, they'll grab a pop, they'll grab this. But at the end of the day, if they're not actually watching those 7, 8, 9, 10 people, something's going to break down, because then who's managing it? He's like, that's where the failure, this guy's a technician, you would love him. He's like, that's where the failure occurs in restaurants, is lack of management and too much doing for people.
Yeah, and and it's tough in the restaurant business. Even we're hospitality people. We take care of people, and this goes back to that leadership part. Even in a management level, where we go, there are times where, like me, I promoted from I was a dishwasher, I was a prep cook, a busser, a bartender, doorman, freaking all the way up through chief operating officer of a 30-unit restaurant sports bar chain as a franchisor. Like I've done just about everything. Don't have me cook though. Let me be clear on that. With that said, when I started off, we learned by lead by example. That we hear that all the time. So I'd go back to what I was best at, like the best hospitality guy, the best worker possibly was. That's how I got promoted. So in the middle of the shift as a manager, I was the best host, server, busser, food runner, bartender, bar back that anybody could be at the same time. Until finally one day, I'm like, I'm so tired, and I'm a big dude, and it gets 118, 120 degrees Fahrenheit here. We had an outdoor patio, sweat's going down my nose, and I stopped and I go, I'm running, thinking everybody's going to follow my example, and people are walking, looking at me like, are you going to clear my table because that's what you do, David?
Yeah.
And I realized then in that moment that there are times where, hey, as a manager, get in there, go get that soda, go get you. That's what we do. We take care of the guest, whatever it takes to do so. And then there's time to go, hey, come here. Let's start table 22. I'll help you out here. You got it. I'm gonna go. And there's times where we go, hey, table 22. We've got a command. We've got to make sure it's done because you truly are the captain of that ship. You are the leader. And if you're chaotic, if you're working too much, you're missing that table 44 is looking like this. Can I, right?
Yeah.
You're not seeing that the kitchen's on their heels and the tickets are railed. You're not doing your job of seeing everything, managing the tide of the restaurant, if you will, as customers come in and leave, where you are in that restaurant, ensuring they have the best experience. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I heard one of the examples that really resonated with me a while back. It's a guy named Bob Jacoby. He was actually my first ever guest on my podcast, NPTV. And he talked about he uses some of the tasks that people do to make everything correct. He uses those as excuses to do his actual job, which is to talk to customers. And he's like, so I look this guy, I call him the king of table touch. He touches every freaking table. He's a general manager that manages. He's not on the fries. He's not in the kitchen. He's not on the line. He manages. And I watch him, and he's like, Matt, if you watch, he's like, you'll see me. That server is on the way to get that table's drinks. I'm going to beat her to them so that I have an excuse to walk over and talk to them because I'm not looking to give them their drink. She's going to get them there fine. She's trained correctly. I just look for excuses. How can I get to somebody's table, introduce myself, have a conversation versus be the awkward walk up and go, hey, is everything okay? Well, yeah, that's what every manager says. I don't want to be the one that says everything okay. I want to walk up and have a conversation. And when I give them their drinks, I can confirm and then have a conversation.
I love that. I'm sure I would like him very much. He sounds like a real hospitality pro because that's really magnificent. Finding a way not to just go, hi, how is everything?
Yeah.
Everything, or my favorite, everything okay? Oh, dear Lord. You just asked me if everything sucks because when I hear okay, yeah, it's okay. You know what I mean? Pet peeves anyway.
I had one on that you'll get a kick out of. This was about 5 or 6 years ago. It's a restaurant near my house. I actually like the restaurant a lot, but I never eat steak there because it's not a restaurant I would get a steak at. And one of my clients said, I need a favor. I know you love that place, and they're a competitor. Will you go have a steak there? I want to see their steak. They've got a steak that's like $11.99. I want to see how it compares to ours. And this place has awesome steak. So I went to this place, and I got the steak, and the server said, hey, do you need A1? I said, I'll let you know if I do. That means the steak's terrible. And she goes, okay, and laughed and giggled. A couple minutes later, I said, can I get some A1? She didn't even catch it. Like, the steak was terrible. I needed A1. And I called him and said, Jim, yeah, their steaks are terrible. You got no competition. But it was funny, the server did not catch that thing that when I asked for A1, it should have triggered in her head like, oh, the steak's bad. And I would have been like, yeah, it's not very good.
Yeah, no. Those are cues that some people it's natural, but other times we need to teach those steps of service. That goes back to the systems part. We could spend all day on hospitality. Don't get me started on that one right now. I don't want to chase that squirrel unless you want to go there. But
no.
I want to kind of get to there's the big pieces of, like you started this off. What should I do now?
Yeah.
As a restaurant owner. Well, when we talk about the leadership, when we start off, number one, leadership. assessing who you are. I'm going to throw something out there that a lot of people don't understand. When it comes to systems, there's a system, a process, a way to doing anything and everything in your business. There's no system too big or too small. It could be as simple as counting out a bar drawer back to $300 all the time, or it could be something as high as and hard as dollars per labor hour worked and looking at efficiencies in our restaurant. But there's a system, a process, a way to doing anything and everything in your business. So what does a system mean? Well, it's anything. It's giving them the step-by-step process, teaching them that. Well, when I start coaching and helping independents and say, hey, we're going to work on this system. Over the years, again, I've been doing this since 2003. In the early years, I try and get an owner. I beat in, come on, you can do this. You can put the restaurant checkbook guardian in place, the restaurant payroll guardian in place. We're gonna do key item reports and waste trackers, and they wouldn't get it done because there's so many things on their plate, so many different places that they're being into because they're supposed to be leading their business, and they just fail to get it done. Very few could get it done. And so one of the things that I discovered probably 5 years into coaching was that my owners that I worked with needed to find what I call an implementer, somebody who gets shit done. Okay. See, as an owner, I got to learn the system. I've got to inspect the system. I've got to help make sure the system's in place, interpret my numbers. But I need somebody next to me who's actually going to implement the system, train my other managers, help me hold them accountable. And so when we look at our team, is there somebody on there? I've got a full step process on how we identify them, but sometimes you just got to trust your gut, especially today. Like if we said, do we have time to go through the process of identifying with special projects and who does a good job and moves to the next level and so on? We don't. We're about to have our asses kicked in just a matter of 2, 3, 5 months. We'll probably be back up to January of 2020 when our sales were record again because there's so many restaurants closed and we don't have enough employees and we got to get them trained, that all of a sudden you sit there and say, I need somebody who can help me get this done. And it's so important, but there's a challenge with that. Matt, sometimes we pick the wrong person. They look like they're somebody who cares. We love them. They love us. They say yes to everything we say. Doesn't this sound exciting? We're going to put this. Oh, sounds great. But they're actually saboteurs. Behind your back, like, can you believe they're raising prices? Can you believe they're asking us to do this? Or they fail to launch. They yes you to death. And so you've got to be on your toes that if you've got a saboteur, give them no more than 3 weeks, a couple months, if that's where your social working heart puts you, to say if they're not going to take action, if they're not going to do the work, you've got to move on, get somebody else, because these systems have to be put in place. So often we've got to realize as owners, we're not the ones to do the work. We're the ones to lead it. We're the ones to interpret the numbers, not actually do the task of ending your DSR tracker on a daily basis or your waste log or invoice log and so on. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And the saboteur part, I think, comes from two places, too. Is number one, I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs tend to hire people like ourselves that we like. And like, I literally got to a point where I had like 7 Matt Plaps at our boat dealership 15 years ago. The consultant was like, Matt, who hired all these people? Because they're in the wrong places based on personality. And I'm like, me? And he's like, you hired a bunch of your friends. Like, you didn't know them, but when you got to know them in the interview process, you hired your friends and you suck at that job. And that's why that person sucks. I was like, oh, and the other side of that, which is kind of unique that I'm facing now, I've got an employee of mine that we promoted higher up the ranks the past 6 months. And I love it because he challenges me on things. Like the other day, I forwarded him a couple of emails on something, and he replied back to me like, hey, if you could have taken care of this yourself, I wasn't in a position to. But he laid out like, this is the negative of this sitting here for 6 hours versus you maybe popping on a computer when you see it. And I appreciate that because a lot of people won't tell the CEO, I guess that's my official title of the company, like this or that or the other. But he literally comes back, and also when we have these conversations, and he'll say, hey, what about this? He'll challenge it, and then I'll give him my explanation, and then we either come to a middle ground, or he's like, yeah, I see the vision, but I think there's too many people that leave behind you are like, yeah, what an idiot. Like, we're not doing that. Like, we should be doing that, instead of having it up front and being like 100% honest with it.
Absolutely. book, Good to Great, right?
Yep.
Do you have the right person on the bus? Are they sitting in the right seat? So this comes back to culture. Does that person you hired match your company culture? Really important. That's probably the number one thing. The second is, are they in the right role? And to go back to what you said, the best leaders have different types of people on their team, because if you hire everybody like you, then all those things that don't get done will continue not to get done. Because they don't have, you need opposite skill sets. And that's where this implementer comes in. They're the doer, you're the leader.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, I love it, and I like the term. Also, we had a guy that came in and helped us implement some stuff a long time ago with the on the bus, in the bus, and he literally drew up on the board in front of the team. He's like, "Hey, I don't know any of y'all, but I know a couple of you need to be under the damn bus." He's like, "Because the bus needs to go over you. You need to be here, thrown off the thing, getting out of here." He's like, "Because there's some of you that are doing the stuff that's affecting negatively the whole company, and that's a big thing." The one thing I'll say also is, I think a lot of people have a tendency to like yes people. I tell clients all the time, I tell them openly, I'm like, hey, I'm going to let you know myself and my three key managers that you're going to deal with are going to give you our feedback based on what we know to be true, not what you want. I said, because you know what? I can direct you to a really good secretary. That's not us. If you tell me you want to do this, you're a restaurant person, I'm a marketing person. I'm going to give you feedback on why that marketing idea sucks, or why it needs to be tweaked, or why it's not going to work. I'm not going to go, oh yeah, I love it. I said, I think too many people are surrounded by yes people.
I think I want to chase that squirrel just a little deeper. And that is this. Often when you have the people that are willing to debate, and especially in the independent restaurant industry, if I've got an owner who's got little experience and they find one of these industry, long timers as a GM, and they're going to go, hey, that's not how we do that in the restaurant business, to the owner. And the owner's like, oh, well, I guess you're right. Well, bullshit. You sign the front of the check, they sign the back. You have a God-given right to go bankrupt if you so choose. You say what happens. Now, listen, it doesn't mean don't shut down to ideas, but don't come to me as a manager or an employee and say you're wrong. Come to me with some ideas. So, for instance, I always had a policy of an open door when I was a restaurant manager. Open door. Come into my office, ask for help at any point in time. But if you come into my office, don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with a solution. Hey, XYZ vendor didn't show up with our steaks this morning. We got a party this afternoon. I could go and run to that broadline distributor. It'd probably take me 3 hours round trip. I could have our secondary vendor drop off those steaks today. They're about 10 cents more a pound, but they don't get here till 4 and the party kicks off at 5. Or I can go across the street and buy steaks at the grocery store. This is what I'm suggesting. So I'm giving you options. And now as a person, instead of coming in, hey, the vendor didn't show up with steaks, and I go, oh, shit, stop what I'm doing, and I fix it because I'm God's gift to my restaurant. I'm the only one that can do it, right? Yep. No, you just got 3 solutions. I can either go, go do this, or yeah, I love that, or hey, go check one more thing. Go tell me what they say. And all of a sudden, like you're, as a manager, you're not just saying here are options here. No, you're showing opportunities that you're thinking, and it's not a problem. There are solutions. And that is incredible. Like if you're a manager listening, if you're an owner listening, this is what you want from your team.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. And I love that. What I also love about that too is when they come to you with those solutions, and you go with, like, you know what, which one do you think's best? Like, you might know in your head which one's best, but which one do you think is the best? And even if maybe they're wrong occasionally, like you said, it might be a couple cents difference, letting them have that victory, because if they have that victory, now you've empowered them more and they've got more ownership versus, always being your decision. I think a lot of times we tend to, as entrepreneurs, try to make every decision ours versus let other people own that decision. And even if it's a mistake, let them learn why it was a mistake.
As long as it doesn't hurt the company, doesn't hurt the guest, doesn't hurt them, right? There's another path to get there, and that's how we learn through experience. Let me give you one more thing before I get to the last thing you got to do. And on this point, I think it's important. A lot of the people I work with are independent restaurants. Actually, 99.99%. I have like maybe a couple franchise type people that are in my systems. And that means they're usually family businesses. And all too often we'll have a matriarch or a patriarch and a kid or whatever. And they're like, hey, you're doing it wrong. And the person, the eldest goes, I built this freaking company. What are you talking about? This was my idea, my sweat and tears, and you're telling me I'm doing it wrong.
Yep.
And because they want to put a POS system in, they want to put systems in place to control labor. They want to change the chart of accounts. It's like bullshit, and it becomes this between family members. And I tell the younger ones, I say, hey, you got to go now to your patriarch, if you will, and not go, you're wrong. You're going to go, hey, what if I could save us $50,000 a year in labor? You got to do nothing. It's just going to be kind of working with a budget and telling the managers how many hours they have. Make sure we still have all the staffing you want. We'll have the 7 servers on it by 6 o'clock when the dinner rush hits. Would you allow me to do that? Like, that's completely different than, we got to schedule on budget. We got to make these changes. You're wrong. It's like, hey, what if I could make you 50 grand? You don't have to lift a finger, and I'm going to make these small changes. May I make that change? Man, that's a way to get things done without pushing mud uphill, and saying somebody's wrong, getting their ire up. You know what I'm saying?
I like it. You just gave me an idea, because I think that's something we could probably implement. We deal with a lot of independent restaurants, and versus me showing them how we've helped a restaurant gain $100,000 in sales annually, and like giving them the idea. It's like, hey, what if I showed you an idea that did this? Like, would you be open to taking these steps from a marketing standpoint to see an extra $1,500 to $2,000 a week?
Often I've worked with distributors and taught their salespeople how to work with independents. And I often go, don't go in there to look at this point. Don't go in there and go, I can fix you. I've got a great solution. They're like, who the hell are you? Versus, you got to be invited in the sandbox. Like, I learned when I first started my business, I'd be in a restaurant, I'd be like, hey, do you see how much labor you have? And the owner would be like, who the hell are you pissing in my sandbox? I didn't invite you. So I'm marking territory, and I'm getting marked over. Instead, what kind of, do you feel like you're a little frustrated with your team? I see a lot of people standing around. If I had an idea that could kind of help that, is that something you want to learn about? And let them invite you. That, the walls come down and they go, yeah, I'd like to learn, versus, let me force this on you, even though you've got a solution that will change their world. If they don't want it, don't give it to them. You know what I mean? And that can be the same when we talk to our, going uphill to our owners. If they don't want it, you've got to learn that if there's a measuring contest, they win. Let me give you the last piece that I would say what you have to do today. And it's not going to be a fun one. Most people's eyes are going to glaze over. And I'm going to tell you, in our industry, the 2 most important things any restaurant should have are budgets and recipe costing cards. Matt, what do you think the 2 things most restaurants never have? Budgets and recipe costing. Yeah. Why? Because they're too hard. Boo frickin' who? You're in the toughest business I know. And you got to be a leader. And remember, the leadership, we need to have numbers and systems, as well as take care of the guest. It's all a part of what you do as a leader. And the truth of the matter is, why do I need a budget? Because a budget allows me to proactively manage my team and put my systems in place. It tells me why I want to put all these systems in place, why all the hard work, why I have to turn through some employees who want to fight the change. And it goes like this. You're going to take your last 12 months, trailing 12 months numbers, and we're going to build a template for the next 12 months. Instead, if we operate the next 12 months the same way we operated the last 12 months, here's how much money we're going to make or lose. Now, it gets a little hairy now, because now we've got a year of COVID numbers, and we've got to decide, are we going back to pre-pandemic numbers and make those changes? So we adjust our sales. We know our sales mix from our point of sale system. We need to know our cost of goods sold by category: bottled beer, draft beer, wine, liquor, food, merchandise. We create our labor by position, not just front of house, back house, salaried, hourly, server, busser, cook, line cook, prep cook, dishwasher, and so on. You get the picture. And then split up occupancy costs all the way down, marketing, and so on. And now we look at it and we say, what if my food cost is running 38% because beef has gone through the roof? I'm a steakhouse, whatever. Hey, if I implement key item tracker, waste tracker, prevent theft on a daily basis, stop dumbass mistakes on a daily basis, which 2 clipboard systems, and then I implement the restaurant checkbook guardian, where I budget. I tell my managers how much money they can spend for food, bottled beer, draft beer, wine, liquor, to stay on budget. Give up ordering without giving up my checkbook. I can reduce your food cost 2 to 3 points, guaranteed. Why? Most restaurants operate 7 to 9 points above ideal food costs. No waste, no theft, no spoilage. Perfect restaurant, which does not exist. So finding those 2, 3 points just by paying attention, controlling, stopping theft, this matters. And so all of a sudden, in month one, I don't just take in that budget, take it down 3 points. I say I got to train my managers. Then month two, I hold them accountable, go from 38 to 35. Hey, we just said 2 most important systems are budgets, recipe, costing cards. Let's start that journey. Well, it may take you 40, 60, 100 plus man hours. And so we may say, based on our light management team and low staff on COVID, it's going to take us 3 months. So in month 4, when we have recipe cards and your POS system product mix, PMix report, we're going to find out what your ideal food cost is. If everybody followed the recipes, no waste, no theft, no spoilage, what should your food cost be? Not some industry average you read in an article or saw a speaker quote the NRA. No, your food costs based on your recipes, your customers, what they purchase. Then we can re-engineer the menu. And in month 5, we put a new menu on the table. And I've done this with members, especially to COVID, we move you down to, say, a 24% ideal food cost, 26% actual, because that's what you have to do to make money. See, you get to create your plan. You just don't snap your fingers and lower costs, lower labor. What systems am I going to put in place? How quickly am I putting them in place? Who am I holding accountable? And then what are my results? And you get to the end of your year, make all these line by line changes, get rid of this service, add a service, whatever it may be. And you say, here's the money I'm going to make and what I deserve. But here's the real magic, Matt. That's the why do I do all this stuff? Why do I implement the systems? Why do I go through all that hard work? Well, now we get our P&L and our budget. We put them side by side. We see where we hit or missed every single month or period. And we sit there and say, hey, I was supposed to make $14,000 this month, but I only made 7. What went wrong? Well, my food cost was up. What systems are my managers not using? I need to hold them accountable, retrain them, re-implement it, change the plan. Oh, they are paying attention. They are using those systems. What new systems do I put in place? Train and change the plan. So now I've got to make that $7,000 up. I've got 11 months. I make tiny little changes that don't affect the guest experience, don't cut product quality, don't go against our core values. And I make that $7,000 back up. I'm going to manage every single month and change the plan every single month. And there's no greater example of your plan will never work when we think of March of 2020, when COVID hit and we shut down our doors to diners. Like, you have to always go back and change your plan. And oh, by the way, that goes back to the leadership part. I've got systems, I've got my numbers, and I'm still giving a crap about the guests and their experience. And that's the full tie-in. You want to go through the systems journey. You've got an implementer, you've got checklist cash controls. How do you know where you need to start if you don't have a budget? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, and it makes perfect sense. It makes too much sense, unfortunately. Because I think it's also tough. It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to get your hands around if you've never had a budget or if you've not been a budget person, and it scares the crap out of people a lot of times that there's things they're buying and spending money on that they shouldn't be. One of the key things too I look at that I have been trying to put in place the last 2 or 3 months are leading indicators versus lagging indicators for me. Like you mentioned, those clipboards and the budgets that a lot of people set a goal. I want to lose 100 pounds in the next 12 months, or I want to do this much in sales, but they don't look at what gets them there. And like the budget to me is a bunch of leading indicators. It's your line items that help you hit that overall number at the end of the year.
And it's also that adage, that which we measure improves. Now, Matt, you said, and we didn't talk about this before we got on, but it's really up to you. But most people, again, have never created a budget, have no idea the steps and how easy it really can be, nor have, say, the spreadsheet savvy. I've got a tool called the Budget Builder MVP, which is a Google spreadsheet. So you got to have a Google account, and it's all in the cloud and whatever. And I've got a video training, and I'd be willing to give it to your viewers / listeners if you'd like. And that way they can have a step up, because it's not just, I don't want to just say, oh, you need a budget. And you go, what the shit? How do I do that? So if it's okay with you, I'd happily give it to them. I give them my email address. They can email me, say they saw me, listen to me on your show, and they want the budget. Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure. What's your email?
So it's David@davidscottpeters.com. And you got to tell me that you saw or listened to me on Matt's show, Matt Plapp's show, and say, I would like the budget tool, and I will happily add it to you. What you're going to do is when I add you to my system, it's going to kick out an email to you and invite you into my member site. And so there'll be a password. You're going to need that. You can change it, but you log in. And when you log in, you're going to have a video lesson on how to create budgets. So I'm going to teach you step by step. You're going to have a video demo of how to use the Budget Builder MVP. I mean, it's pretty detailed, but it's going to take a little practice. And then I'm going to give you a link that you will then go to open up and copy that link into your Google Drive, and then you can use it. And so I'll give you the training on the tool, and you'll be on your way to really making change in your business.
I love it. And I've got it on the screen there. Get the budget planner, David at davidscottpeters.com. And I'm guessing davidscottpeters.com is the best place people can learn about you and all this genius knowledge you just dropped on us.
I hope so. If not, my website sucks.
Cool.
I would tell you, just on a side note, if people are looking for more tips and tricks, you can also, a great place would be go on my YouTube channel, and it's David Scott Peters. I pump on their video tips every single week. So there's a full library of tips for you to kind of help you, from POS systems to leading people to labor systems and so on. So that's a great resource as well.
Well, awesome. I look forward to a couple of weeks when I'm in Arizona. I get to meet you in person. We've talked a lot online, so I look forward to that. We'll get some more information for people, but make sure, again, davidscottpeters.com. If you want the planner, let me click the button here. There we go. Get the budget planner, David at davidscottpeters.com. Let them know you saw it with Matt Plapp, and he'll take care of you and get you that. And I appreciate your time.
Hey, man, I appreciate you, everything that you do to kind of help our industry, bring experts to them and kind of give them the information. I would tell you this, as awesome as you are to do this, if you're watching or listening to us and past guests of Matt and future guests of Matt, the key is this. My father had a phrase that ideas are cheap. It's the people who put them into action that are priceless. You need to take action. Find one idea from all these experts, including myself. You take action, you will find major change in your life and your business. That's the key. Don't just gather information, do something with it. And then that's where the magic happens.
I agree. Take action. I appreciate it. I'll see you in a few weeks, and thanks for your time this morning.
Matt, look forward to it.